For those wanting to take the retest for Chapter 5, there were just a couple of things that I wanted to point out. And of course, you've got other recordings, your textbook, the online content, and things that you can go back and you can review, and you've taken the test, and so you kind of have looked at the ones that you've missed, hopefully, and spent some time maybe running those through the compiler and thinking about those. But I wanted to just bring a couple of things out. Remember that if we are checking for equality for two integers, we've got to be careful not to accidentally put a single equal sign here. A single equal sign means assignment. And really what this is the same is if I said var1 equals var2 up here, I'm assigning the value, the 6 that's in var2, and I'm overriding the value in var1. I'm replacing the 5 with the 6 here. Some compilers in the past have allowed this to go, and then you just had a logic error when you ran it and your code did not give you the expected results. NetBeans now is actually causing that to be a compile error. It's trying to evaluate this into a true or false or Boolean expression, as we might call it, and it can't do it because there's only one equal sign there, and it understands that's an assignment. So you'll get a compile error now in NetBeans if you don't put the two equal signs. And so here we're checking for equality. Remember, if we have strings that we check for equality slightly differently. If we want to check for strings, we do dot equals. We use the equals method of the string class, okay? And we could either do x equals y or y equals x. Doesn't matter. It's going to compare the two for equality, but you cannot use two equal signs with strings. You can only use that with numerics. The other thing I want to caution you on is in the test, you will see misleading indentation or poorly formatted if statements. And so you will be tempted to think that if, for example, these are both a 5, var1 does equal var2, I'm going to print out equal and I'm going to print out xyz, and that's true. That will happen. However, if we put var2 back to a 6, now they are not equal. You're going to be tempted to say nothing will print here, but that's not true. Remember, without the brace, this is the only line that the compiler considers dependent, conditional. This is the only line that may or may not print depending on whether this is true. This line will always print. The fact that it's indented to mislead you, the compiler does not care about indentation. The AP folks are trying to mislead you. The compiler is looking for the clue of the braces. It's not caring about the fact that this is indented and you're meaning for it to also be conditional or dependent, and you're meaning for it to only print when those two variables have the same thing. It doesn't understand that. So if I run this code, I'm going to get printed out X, Y, Z, okay? Because really, without the braces, that's the program. So make sure that you're paying attention to that, the lack of braces, okay? That's really what we meant there. The other thing I want to tell you is, we talk about how we have one-line if statements like I just showed you, where I had equals print out, right? And that was conditional on this if statement being true. That's the only time that line would print out. Now, you can have nested ifs. Let's make these all the same for sake of argument. So I can have nested ifs, and then I can do system.out.println all equal. Okay, so you might be tempted to say, well, here are two lines, right, that are under this if, and I don't have a brace here for this if. Is it going to work? Is it going to compile? What's the deal with that? Even though this is two lines, if I count them, To the compiler, this is 1 unit, okay? So I can get away without the braces here, and it considers this to be 1 unit. Therefore, it's okay for me not to have the brace, and it will come down and say, okay, 5 is equal to 5, yes, hello equals hello, yes, print out all equal. And I think that's confusing because really, you know, we're expecting this. We're thinking this is 2 lines in the body of this if, and how can we not have braces and how can it work? Because when you get into nested ifs, the idea is that this is one, sorry, I'm losing my voice. This is 1 unit. So this is one thing that is in the body of this if, and it's okay not to have the braces here. Now, if I'm going to have multiple lines in this if body, I'm going to have, you know, a new variable. Then, of course, I've got to have the braces here, or this if statement doesn't understand that these are also conditional. And I know there were some on the test that were tricky like that, where they didn't have a brace and they had a bunch of nested if-else type things going on, and you're tempted to say that's not right because I don't have a brace here, but I've got multiple lines under it. Again, I don't know how else to say it except that this is 1 unit to this, to the body of this if, and it's okay not to have the braces. So those were the tricky things I wanted to point out to you. Also realize just because I put the else here, again, this is a poorly formatted if, it is misleading. You're going to think that if they are equal, then I'll check X and Y. But if they're not equal, if this is a 6, you're going to think this else is going to fire off because 1 is not equal to 2, when really this else goes with this if. The else goes with the closest unmatched or unclosed if, no matter how it's indented. If I really wanted it to go with that if, what I would have to do is I would have to put some braces in to really signify how I want this to go. I'd have to put 2 sets of braces in. If I put the 2 sets of braces in, I close this if, but again, it's really this brace here that signifies all of the body of that if is done and the else should go with it. I could technically even leave these braces out, but to match this else up with this if requires that I really signify the close of this if with a brace, even though technically I don't need a brace because this is 1 unit. This is considered the 1-line body in effect. If I want the else to match up correctly, I've got to put the brace here to signify specifically, hey Java, I don't want the else to go with that closest unmatched if that doesn't have its own else. I want it to go with this one. So I'm putting the brace here to signify that this is the end of the outer driving if, and any else should match to it. Else or else if. Doesn't matter if it's an else or an else if. So I hope that makes that a little clearer because those are the ones that generally get people on the test.